Hello and thanks for tuning in to Undercurrent, WA's only current affairs show made right here in Perth by Perth people about Perth. It's great to have you with us. Tonight we have another great show lined up for you. First up, Nikki Campati looks at the problem of urban sprawl, something that Landgate knows all about.
Perth's urban sprawl is as extensive as London, with our metro area now stretching over 120 kilometres from Yanchep to Peel. Obviously, this is unsustainable. West Australians have become accustomed to beachside living and big backyards, but as the Department of Planning have specified, by 2031 we need to be living in high-density urban dwellings.
So what's the current population in Perth and how does that compare to 20 years ago?
The latest estimate of Perth population is about 1.65 million in the Perth city. Back in 1981, 30 years ago, our population was just under 900,000. So since then, we've almost doubled.
This increase will bring Perth to the size of Melbourne, a city with a much greater population density than ours.
At the moment, our population density is 1.6 people per square kilometre, which compares with across all our capital cities in Australia. Currently, it's 310 people per square kilometre, and that compares with the Australian capital city average of around 370.
According to Mark Sinclair, Director of Real Estimations, the key to relieving the problem of urban sprawl is to reassess our needs when it comes to finding and building a home.
Very strong demand for people to buy an established home in the suburbs, whereby there is a very strong push, particularly for the first and second home buyers. Those who are with children do like the concept of a 4-bedroom or 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom home, whereby they're close to schools, transport, shops, and that is very much based a lot on the Australian dream as opposed to pragmatism, and I don't see that changing in the short term. People are very focused once again on the big house. They want all the infrastructure, they want the outdoor areas, and of course they can't necessarily afford that for their first or second home because of the sheer cost, so they do have to move out. And I do think people get very swayed as opposed to let's start smaller, let's go with buying an apartment, an older property, get some equity and then move into something as we develop a family. So they're very swayed by that romantic notion of having the family home.
The Department of Planning, in its Directions 2031 document, emphasises a need for high-rise and infill developments, stating 121,000 new dwellings will be required to meet the projected growth in the central sub-region. However, with affordability, an ageing population and lifestyle choices all playing a factor in where people choose to live, it remains to be seen if this is a viable option.
And I do see that once again, if they can make land more affordable and maintain the medium density heights, it will attract more and more people moving forward. I don't ever see a swing away from living in the suburbs in a home to moving into the city. Primarily, it keeps coming back to the two major influences in a person's decision: the emotive reason why they're doing that in the first place, followed by the financial considerations. If it was purely based on a financial consideration, people do need to weigh up A, the cost of moving out, B, the maintenance of a home, B, the upkeep of gardens and water consumption, and that over a 2, 5 or 10 year period versus living in an apartment or a townhouse or a small home with no garden. And also, but it's a very long-term education process. There will always be those people that are quite smart, they've outgrown the family home, they'll sell that and they'll move into something smaller. But in generations moving forward, it is an education process that probably needs to start at school level to understand, why do you need a big house? Why do you need a family home? Why do you need to be 20, 30 or 40 kilometres further out? So I think the government strategy long term has a lot of merit. I think it will achieve a lot of objectives. Time will tell whether they achieve all of them. Having said that, the government need to spend a lot more money and time on infrastructure, cheaper land, making sure there's accessibility to schools and shopping, and not just social things, because if they want to attract people to come back towards a closer infill environment, they have to have those things at the disposal of everybody who wants them. CB Centro has been probably the most successful medium to high density redevelopment in the Perth area for some years, closely followed by East Perth. That style of development has been highly successful. The streets have been well done. If they could replicate that style of development further around other parts of the metropolitan area, it'll continue to do very well because people are attracted. The big key issue is making it affordable.
The Department of Planning were approached a number of times over the past month but were unable to provide us with an interview to discuss Directions 2031.
In our final corporate responsibility segment, Joe spoke to Murdoch University's Karen Thompson about how the role of corporate responsibility is changing and how businesses are offering great incentives for prospective employees.
Karen Thompson, what is your experience? What has brought you to this panel today?
I guess being a Murdoch alumni is one of the main reasons I was invited. I work within Murdoch University nowadays in the executive education area, and our focus is a lot on management and leadership and education in that space. And I guess, you know, corporate social responsibility is something that factors very heavily in the decision making and strategy of organisations.
You've got a lot of experience in giving management direction as well as putting people on the correct career paths. What exactly is corporate social responsibility?
I guess it's really the way that organisations actually work within themselves and what they show to their public, their audience, their consumers, about the ability to deliver, you know, not just profitability for the company, but looking at what's in the interests of the community as well. So.
Is this an asset that a prospective employee or student would be looking for in a career?
Certainly there's a lot of careers that are built around that area nowadays, but it's also one of the things that can make companies who take corporate social responsibility seriously and do a good job in it, really can make them an employer of choice for people who are going to be working for them.
So a manager that's perceiving this holistically, could you give a recommendation as how to approach this?
Well, I guess we'll see after tonight's panel what comes out, and there may be some more tips and tricks.
Again, and she's a very optimistic woman, has helped many people with their career moves. What do you think the landscape's going to be like with corporate social responsibility in the future?
I think it really will have an impact as far as employment goes, in that, as I said, the ability for people to really find out more about organisations because of the way that communication has changed. There's so much more transparency. People can find out so much about organisations before they go and work for someone, and they can make a choice as to whether they will work for them or not. So I think, that will be one of the big changes.
It's definitely a selling point and a PR exercise. What would be the incentive that you would offer your direct employees?
I guess, it's really interesting to see what is out there in the marketplace. There's a number of organisations who've got great schemes in place where they have things like community days where their employees can have 1 or 2 days a year to work for charities or for whatever community organisation they want to do. So building things like that into employment contracts is fantastic. It gives people a feeling of ownership and empowerment as employees for organisations who do that type of thing. So.
And very often it's exciting work. Imagine doing something with RSBCA or having that in your contract and knowing what's ahead.
Absolutely, and people who do things with groups like Make-A-Wish or Starlight, and they have days where instead of being in the office, they're at a hospital helping sick kids and entertaining them, doing fun things. That really helps them, as individuals. And when they know that their employer is supportive of that and gets really behind it, it really it makes life a lot more interesting, a lot more fun.
And that can certainly only turn over a little bit more profit.
Oh, absolutely, because people, when there's engagement from an employee perspective, you get the people are more excited about being at work and doing things. You get that give and take, and if people know that they're working for an organisation that really cares, they tend to put that much more effort into things themselves. So.
Karen, I would come and work with you any day. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Welcome back. Let's head over to Black Tom's now, where Nick Hayes is having a chat with State Opposition Leader Eric Ripper.
Mr. Ripper, thanks for joining us. It's been a tough start to the year with this leadership challenge. Was Ben Wyatt naive
Well, I think he made a mistake. As I said publicly at the time, I think he was poorly advised. He shouldn't have gone ahead with the challenge, but he did. He'll recover from that, as will the party.
Is there a future for him in future opposition and also to future government?
Well, I've asked him to be Education Shadow Minister. He's already performing strongly in that role. I think he's still a future leader of the party, and he's still a relatively young politician in political terms.
Colin Barnett, what do you think of him as a person and as a politician?
You mean I have to say something positive about Colin Barnett?
Well, only if you want to.
Look, clearly Colin is head and shoulders above the rest of his ministerial team. He's got a weak team behind him. I think Colin sometimes underestimates the impact on ordinary people of the decisions he takes. For example, he can see, he thinks, a rational reason why electricity prices have to go up 46% in 2 years. He underestimates how much that is hurting ordinary people in Western Australia. So I see him as more interested in policy of a particular type and less concerned about the impact of that policy on ordinary people. Person for person, I've got a better team in the shadow cabinet, and I think I've also got a pretty strong team on the back bench pressing for inclusion in a future Labor cabinet.
In opposition, which comes first, holding the government accountable or developing public policy?
Well, it's really about both. You've got two jobs. You have got to ask the questions about extravagance, waste, poor priorities, lack of action, inconsistency, all of those things. That's part of the traditional role of the opposition in our system. You've also got to develop a new agenda for government after 2013.
Which do you think you've been more successful at?
Oh, well, we've focused on accountability. So policy development's an area where we've really got to step up to the mark this year. That's to be expected. You start any period of opposition just focused on accountability. As you get closer to the election, you've got to have more and more focus on new policy.
How much influence does the unions have on you as a political party?
The unions are important, and we shouldn't forget that union leaders are elected leaders in their own right. And so workers in unions do have a right to have a say in the politics of this state. But Labor's much broader and bigger than the union connection. We've got to get the support of more than 50% of our community in order to govern, and that means that we talk to a lot of other stakeholders as well.
Is it difficult to get media attention?
Quite frankly, it's very difficult to get our message out through the crowded media environment that we've got today. That's why we're looking at new media. You know, we look at Twitter, we look at our website.
Your partner is also your colleague. What's it like sharing a public and private life with Liliana?
Well, it's a good life, but obviously both being in politics means that occasionally we have differences of political opinion. Now, I can't rely on Liliana's vote or Liliana's support in any given debate because she's fiercely independent.
What does Eric Ripper do when he's not holding Colin Barnett accountable?
Well, I like to read science fiction, so I do a bit of that. I'd like to do more bushwalking than I do. I've got family responsibilities, less so than in the past. By the time you do politics and a little bit of that other stuff, there's not much time left in a week.
Time for a short break now. We'll be right back with more Undercurrent. I'm here in front of one of Perth's very favourite drinking holes. But one thing you won't find inside is kids. Well, kids having a drink anyway. How early is too early to start drinking? In some European countries, children do drink wine at the dinner table. It's an accepted part of their culture. So why are things so very different here in Australia? Mara Pamana spoke to Etza Pierce about the important role that parents play in shaping their children's attitude towards alcohol.
Stats show that the average age of a teenager having their first alcoholic drink is 13 years old. And by the time they turn 16, 20% of Australian teenagers will frequently binge drink.
Most teenagers are not actually physically mature to be able to handle alcohol, and it can affect their brain. So if you have a lot of alcohol, people can actually stop breathing, they can become unconscious, they can faint, they can do all sorts of things.
I think I did have some when I was 15, but maybe I didn't start properly drinking and getting drunk or tipsy till I was early 16. We go out most weekends, and if you don't have alcohol, then you're basically the odd one out.
Certainly the 17, 18 and 19-year-olds that we see, it's not their first drink. They often will report they've been drinking since the age of about 14, 15, and sometimes at hazardous levels, i.e. on a weekend they may actually do a lot of binging.
Well, there's a certain point where you might think, okay, maybe I've had too much, and then you kind of like steer away from it. But some girls, like, I don't know when to stop.
Some people will come in and they may be combative, they may be very verbally abusive or very verbally aggressive. Some of our patients may come in and they might be unconscious, so we have to do the main thing is to keep them alive, obviously.
I think as a teenager it's not really something that you stop and think, oh, what's going to happen if I do this, but maybe you tend to like stick with your friends and you only want to drink in an environment where you know you're safe.
In a recent media release from the Australian Drug Foundation, alcohol experts proposed secondary supply laws where parents would be in control of their children's access to alcohol.
That's difficult, isn't it, in relation to setting up laws and regulations. There are lots of ways around it. There are a lot of older friends or family members can buy alcohol for young people.
My parents personally, no, my parents don't provide alcohol for me, but I do know a few girls whose parents are happy for them to drink and they will provide them with alcohol.
Some parents will provide alcohol for their children just because I think they feel it's safer because they know what their kids are drinking. I have an 18-year-old brother, but he refuses to, so I normally ask his friends because the couple live locally, so then they'll pick a couple bottles out for me.
Parents have a hard time of it, I think. Often people have to work or they may not necessarily be available. They may not be around to supervise their kids. I think education goes a lot further than just regulation.
If that law did come into practice, it would stop a lot in some degree, but then again the kids would find other ways to get it.
I don't think that there's necessarily any way that you can stop it because it's basically going to happen anyway because there's always a way.
You actually have to look at how you talk to your kids about safer drinking levels or drinking levels at all, or any other drug use, for that matter. Setting up, I suppose, a culture of that kids feel comfortable and they feel social without necessarily having to drink. It's about people's own ego enforcement, it's about their own level of confidence and their own level of confidence to be able to say no.
Depending on whether I'm playing, because I play soccer quite competitively, so if it's in the season I normally don't drink. My friends are all free to drink, but a lot of the time I don't drink. I think I have enough confidence in myself just to say no and still have a great time.
Hi, I'm Robert White. With 1 in 5 teens regularly binge drinking, there are calls for new laws enforcing parents to take more responsibility.
I think parents should take responsibility of their children's drinking 100%.
I guess they should to an extent, but I mean, a kid's going to do what a kid's going to do. They're going to get hold of it anyway. If they want to get hold of it, they will.
I think they should be, because kids these days are just drinking too much and getting out of hand. There's too much violence.
I work at a bottle shop myself. I see parents coming in to buy their kids drink as well.
I guess if the parents buy them grog, at least they know what they're giving them.
Parents do have an influence about how the kids behave, and like kids, you have to buy your drink and everything, and where does the money come from? So maybe some parents will give you the money, and maybe that money is used in an incorrect way by binge drinking.
Parents should know where their kids are at night time, because it's a craze now where kids, can steal some beers out of the fridge off the old man and all connect up and, and get into trouble.
At what age do you think teenagers should be allowed to start drinking?
Well, they reckon it's 18, but I reckon it should go to 21. It's a more suitable kind of age, where they've got a bit more of a brain than 18.
I reckon 16, that's a appropriate age.
As long as you do it responsible.
Yeah, responsible.
Yeah,
16.
Not bad.
The current age now is 18 and above to buy liquor and all this kind of thing. It's good enough, but then again, it all falls back to the family, and the environment that they grew up in.
I'm down here on the beautiful Perth foreshore, and in fact, if everything goes to plan, where I'm standing right now will actually be underwater. Perth's bold new waterfront plan will be right here on the foreshore in Perth itself. But the question is, does Perth really need it? Can we afford it? And what improvements will it bring to Perth and all of its people?
After 30 years of discussion about redeveloping the Perth waterfront, Premier Colin Barnett has announced that the project will finally be going ahead, with construction to start early next year.
I don't think they've got it right ever with any of the plans, because all of them have been completely over-the-top developments. They have shown, zero sensitivity to the river, to the people, to the relationship with the rest of Perth. The fundamental issue is that people don't want a $440 million waste of money.
The plan to finally revitalise the Perth waterfront has been met with plenty of criticism, some not in favour of the area even being touched, some welcome the ideas with open arms, and others expressing their cautious optimism.
It looks like a different planet, looks like Mars.
I actually think Perth needs to do something probably radically different to its waterfront area and make it more attractive.
No, this is beautiful. Leave it how it is.
The government actually needs to get on and be doing something. Clearly the big attraction of the waterfront project is the Indigenous Cultural Centre. Now, unfortunately, the government said there's not a cent for that. They don't have proper designs, and they haven't really consulted on it.
Waterfront development will provide a centre point of attraction for tourists who are coming to Perth. It'll also provide a centre point of attraction for visitors who see visual images of Perth as well. This is something that Western Australia and Perth has needed for a long time, and we're very pleased the fact that there are deadlines that have been set for 2014.
What I think drives a lot of the negative comment is the boring nature and the timidity in the designs of the Barnett government so far.
Waterfront precincts like the one planned for Perth around the world have been based on multi-use plans. They've all evolved because they've got mixed use, so retail, hospitality, short and long stay accommodation, commercial, as well as people staying in terms of homes and apartments being built as well. It's about the mixed use that will give the most level of vibrancy and attraction to the area. So it's going to be important that the waterfront development has a good balance based on world-leading planners to give best advice to the state government on what the perfect mix will be.
I get most of the tourists coming here when I'm closing up at about 5:30, so everything's usually closed by then except for the pub. So they are very disappointed, especially weekdays as well, nothing's open.
Many have voiced their concerns about the effectiveness of the project and the disruption throughout construction, damaging more aspects of our city than the government realises.
Yeah, the development here is astonishing, so I would support it.
It will take away the laid-back way that it is at the moment. It will. It definitely will.
I think it might be too much. It's lovely down here. It's nice and quiet, and yet you can see Perth, and it's very pleasant. It would, to me, it would seem a bit of a shame to spoil it.
There is the potential to make the riverfront the most amazing place for West Australians. This is a very timid start.
Lord Mayor Lisa Scafidi says, along with the Perth City Link, this is the most significant thing happening in the city in the past 100 years.
Well, that's it for tonight's episode. If you'd like to get involved with Undercurrent, or if you've got a story that you think we should cover, get in touch with us here at West TV. This is your show about your city, and we'd love to hear from you. Your feedback really is a very important part of how we put this show together. Why not visit our website at wtvperth.com.au and join in the discussions about tonight's episode. You can add Undercurrent TV on Facebook or join us on Twitter at Undercurrent TV. We'll be back again next week, and we'd love to have your company again. I'm Jason Jordan. Good night.